All right, this is exciting news. I mentioned last week we were not going to put out any videos this week because I had a ton of work to do getting ready to relaunch our podcast. For those of you who listen to our podcast, you've probably been missing it because we haven't produced a new podcast episode in a year. And the real reason for that was because we didn't have the space to produce a podcast. When we moved, I didn't have any podcast studio space. And while we film our videos outside and there's a lot of background noise and things going on, when we produce a podcast, because people who are listening have headphones on and they're driving, we like to be able to make sure that the audio quality of our shows is good for those who are listening on headphones, who are driving, who are busy doing other things. We don't want the show to hurt their ears. This space, we're getting ready to move, this space freed up. And this is going to be our podcast studio and video studio right on the other side of this window here. So I started putting together the podcast studio, and I told you last week I wasn't going to be able to make any YouTube videos because I was going to be busy doing this. Turns out not only was I busy doing this, but also busy with everybody got sick. Like a really nasty bug went through the house. Most of us are back to good health. We're still not 100% with the family, but we're getting there. But the reason I wanted to make a video today, for one, just to update you who have been patiently waiting for our videos. They are going to be coming back soon. We're going to be getting back into doing our vlogs. We're also really close to being done with this podcast studio. As you can see behind me, I've done some sound treatments to the walls. I'm going to play a little piece of audio right here so you can hear how this room sounded before. So this is a test to see how bad the audio sounds in here right now, and it sounds pretty bad. There's clearly lots of echo in this setup right now. The side microphone's picking up so much fuzz. You can see it sounded really bad. The quality, if you're not listening on headphones, you might not have picked up on it, but for those of you who listen to our podcast, you will very much appreciate the sound treatments we did to the wall. It was kind of a DIY thing, but it took a long time, but it did a really good job. And I'm not even in the spot I'm supposed to be. If I kind of come over here, I'm out of the one camera. But for those of you who are podcast listeners, you're really going to appreciate this. This is the spot I'm supposed to sit and talk on the podcast. And you can hear the quality of the audio is just fantastic. I'm not done. I'm really close. There's still a little bit more work to do to prepare not only the hardware and the room itself, but I also had to prepare on the business side of things to get the podcast running again, how to make sure that the podcast is going to be viable, how to make sure I can keep up with our guest submissions. And that's really why I'm making this video today, to announce we are now taking guest submissions for 2019's Homesteady podcast. This is getting very real very quickly. So if you would like to be on our podcast, if you're not familiar with the podcast, we do a long form interview. We get a lot of your story, your background, and then we dive into kind of practical homestead tips. Whatever topic you're there to talk about, you can dive into with us. I have a application. I'm going to have the link right below for any of you who would like to be on the show. What you need to do is fill out the application and hit submit, and that application will be sent to me. We'll review it, and if we want to bring you on the show, we won't be able to bring everybody on the show. We don't produce enough episodes to keep up with guest submissions, but we will hopefully yours will stand out and we'll be able to, take you on. So anyway, this is really exciting, and we look forward to paging through guest submissions. So fill out if you'd like to be interviewed on our podcast. It will show up in iTunes. There will be parts of the podcast played here on YouTube. Everybody's going to get to enjoy those interviews. And if you think you would make a good interview, basically you have to be able to give value to our audience. So if you have something homesteady that you want to share with the audience, that you have some good knowledge on, good experience, a good story to share, whatever you think is worth it, fill out the application, send it our way, and we'll look forward to reviewing your application. So click right here to submit that application to get on our podcast, and stay tuned. Next week we'll have more update videos as far as what's going on here with Homesteady, with the vlog, with the podcast, and we're really excited where things are headed here.